The No Man's Sky story begins in August 2016. The game has nearly 250,000 players on Steam alone, mostly from pre-orders, but this won't last. By October, the game will have lost 99% of those players, with barely 2,000 sticking around, and searing feedback from critics will just continue to flood in.
No Man's Sky can't help but feel underwhelming. It's average. It does half of everything right.
For most, there was a realization that No Man's Sky was doomed from the outset, and now it was well and truly dead just 2 months after launch. So how the f did we end up here nearly a decade later? Well, let's find out. It's now November, and the Steam player count has recovered to around 10,000. This was thanks to the appropriately named Foundation update, which introduced freighters, the option to select your game mode, and even base building. And I don't know about you, but I find it pretty shocking to realise that the game was released for over 3 months without these features. I mean, what even was there to do? The game was also really struggling with performance issues, with patch notes seemingly addressing crashes caused by every possible reason under the sun. The update did infuse some hope into fans at least, but ultimately not enough. By February 2017, the player count found an embarrassing new all-time low of barely 1,000. Fortunately, March would bring back a bit of life to the game. The Pathfinder update introduced the first 3 exocraft in the form of the Nomad, Roma, and Colossus, as well as starship classes and even the ability to own multiple ships. Pretty groundbreaking stuff. The introduction of multi-tool classes and a doubling of the number of base building parts. Permadeath's edition was well received, but the rest of the features felt like the bare minimum for most players, as the player count then dropped once again to barely 1,000 in May of 2017. An entire year after launch would see the game's biggest boost yet, the Atlas Rises update. The new 30-hour story path gave players something to do, whilst some proper depth was added to exploration through the introduction of wealth, conflict, and economy levels to star systems. Crash freighters became a thing, as did the space station mission system, and terraforming was finally possible. Aside from that, the portal and glyph system finally made our community-focused gameplay possible, and you could also warp between systems in your freighter. The patch kept players interested for a couple of months, but by May 2018, counts hovered back around 1,000 for the 3rd time. It would then take Hello Games another year to release the next patch, as they skipped from version 1.3 to 1.5 to indicate that the next update was supposed to be a big one. Thankfully, much needed proper multiplayer support was introduced, and bases could now be built anywhere on a planet, rather than just being attached to preset outpost locations. Full third-person views for both your character and ship were also added for the first time, while character customization was finally released. Frigates and their missions became a feature, and we also got some much needed graphical detail. The Abyss and Visions updates later that year would go on to bring in the submarine, underwater base building, new biomes, as well as everyone's favourite corrupted sentinels. And these updates would be enough to keep the minimum player count at a healthier 5,000. It was starting to feel like the comeback was now on. But before we look at the next defining update, this video has been very kindly sponsored by Gamavo.com, who are offering you 5% off everything, including No Man's Sky, with code AGR and the link in the description. Gamavo is an EU-registered online platform for digital products where suppliers compete with each other to offer you the lowest prices. Whether you're looking for the latest and greatest games, pre-orders, gift cards, or software, Gamavo has you covered. They've got games for every platform and also offer an inexpensive smart subscription that's less than £1 or $1 for the first month, and then just £2.50 or $3.20 afterwards. This gives you access to 10% off monthly discounts, 20% off daily deals, free game after 3 months of membership, and even 24/7 live support. You'll also have priority for game pre-orders, exclusive member-only pricing, and access to regular giveaways and competitions. Their excellent support has led to 30,000 5-star reviews on Trustpilot, so your game purchases are very safe with them. They also have a great influencer program, so if you're a fellow creator, no matter how big or small, do reach out to them. So if you're looking to buy No Man's Sky or any other game, use code AGR to get 5% off. And don't forget to do that via the link in the description to make the code work. But back to the video. The next now annual big summer update would be 2.0 Beyond, and Hello Games went all in, even putting it on the front of the game covers. Full VR support was the headline. The entire game could be played in VR, not just some cut down version like many other games at the time. The maximum multiplayer session count increased from 4 to 8 players on console and from 4 to 32 on PC, with the Anomaly also becoming the multiplayer hub that we know it as today, with the ability to spawn it in anywhere and also browse and visit other player-made bases. Blueprints were finally unlockable through a technology tree. Yes, it took them 1100 days to do that, whilst we also got the base powering system, as well as taming, riding, and harvesting animals. Anyone who played the game at this time will also understand how revolutionary this single additional ramp was to the old space station design. Smaller, more regular updates in the months following would also keep the player count at a pretty respectable 10 to 20,000, as the game finally started to feel quite put together. Synthesis added starship upgrades and the ability to own multiple multi-tools. The Living Ship update added living ships, and the Exomech update also did what it said on the tin. It was a pretty good time for the game, as the content just kept coming. Around the 4-year anniversary of launch, the 3.0 Origins update brought some needed world overhauls, with better colour, landscape variety and weather, including volcanoes, firestorms, meteors and tornadoes. While there were no single standout features, which might explain the more moderate player count boost, it helped the game to feel more alive. Looking back, it was somewhat of a Worlds Part 0 update. Not long later, we then got the free Next Gen update, bringing graphics and loading time improvements, but more importantly, cross-platform support for No Man's Sky. Next Gen console multiplayer sessions also got improved to 32 players, in line with PC. Another flurry of smaller, regular patches would then bring about the full pet system and egg sequencing, thanks to Companions, the much-loved Community Expeditions feature, thanks to Expeditions, and a big visual overhaul with the Prisms update. Settlements were then added in Frontiers in 2021, leading to a pretty big spike in players, something that couldn't quite be said about the early 2022 Sentinel update, which was mainly just a light weapons overhaul. With momentum continuing to build, the Outlaws update brought solar ships, improved space combat, and an ability to play the game as more of an illegal smuggling operation, evading cargo scans or building your squadron up along the way. Frigates now also passed over planets, and dogfights were possible at low altitudes, just above a planet's surface. Shortly after, the Endurance update brought another player spike as everyone dived back in to build their fully fledged base within their freighter, whilst Waypoint brought the game to Nintendo Switch, an almost certain player spike that we just can't see from the Steam charts. These changes ultimately allowed No Man's Sky to easily retain an average Steam player base of over 10,000 going into 2023. That player base would then spike to around 24,000 in April with the Interceptor update, adding corrupted planets and the very sought after at the time Interceptor ships with their hover features. We got Sentinel capital ship battles, new enemy types and Sentinel multi-tools, although there was still much to be wanted from a combat perspective. The Echoes update brought a pretty balanced feature set. We got the Pirate Dreadnoughts, which enabled the Star Wars-esque trench run gameplay, a new narrative path, and a space combat improvement through the ability to choose where to divert power to in your ship, a bit like in Starfield. We also got the Staff multi-tool, as well as Outlaws becoming their own faction. The Omega update at the start of 2024 made the game briefly free to play and added a new expedition, and following this, concurrent Steam players sat at a very strong 20,000-ish for a few months. Soon after, the Orbital update refreshed space stations into the, I think, far improved layout that we know today, as well as finally introducing the ability to build a custom starship. Freighter frigate missions also became much more involved with the player, sometimes requiring decisions or direct intervention, and discounts from merchants depending on your alien race standing also became available. Now as we get further into 2024, the game starts to really resemble its current form, thanks to the Worlds Part I update. It was a huge overhaul to planetary terrain and environments, with floating islands, volumetric clouds, as well as much improved lighting, shadows and water effects. Ice and desert worlds also got a much needed improvement, and if you happen to especially like beetles for some reason, then we got an improvement in beetle diversity. Why on earth this was so high up on the patch notes, I do not know. We then all got hyped up a few months later, thinking Worlds Part II would be upon us, only for it to be a fishing update. To be honest, I'm not complaining though. I think it's brilliant that we get a whole update dedicated to something like this. Fortunately, not too much later, in very early 2025, we did then receive Worlds Part II, which introduced purple star systems, an accompanying storyline, as well as gas giants, water worlds and jungles. We also got the abandoned game mode and seahorses, prawns and squid. Also a personal favourite of mine was the dynamic water system, where water reacts to you flying over it. Ship and multi-tool cold storage also catered more to veteran players, opening up a bit more endgame gameplay, and the effects of these updates does show. Player counts were able to sit at over 20,000 for a sustained period. The Beacons update further compounded this in mid-2025 by enhancing settlement overseeing, adding the ability to manage multiple settlements, use your squadron to help you defend them, and also greater depth in dispute management and settlement customization. However, player counts would then start to tail off a bit, at least until we then saw the biggest spike that we've ever seen, other than launch of course. This spike was caused by the Voyagers update, introducing a feature that had been long yearned for, present in Starfield and Star Citizen, but always lacking in No Man's Sky: the ability to walk around within your own ship. A whole new, fully customizable corvette ship class was added to do this, and with that came the ability to fly with your friends on board and even spacewalking. You could customize the modules, exterior and interior design, and even use it as a mission hub with friends. Previous players flocked back to the game to build one of these ships, but equally it was an incredibly inviting opportunity for new players, especially those looking for a multiplayer experience. And that pretty much brings us up to the current state of No Man's Sky. As I write this, the 24-hour peak has a whopping 75,000 players, making it the 19th most popular game on the whole of Steam. It really is a one-of-a-kind transformation, and hopefully this video helps you appreciate that nearly everything you see and interact with in the modern No Man's Sky experience simply wasn't there at launch. It justifies the initial hate and boycott, but it also proves that redemption is possible, even if it takes a whole 9 years. There's no sign of updates stopping just yet either, even with the prospect of Light No Fire, and if I personally could wish for just one final update, I would want it to be a big combat overhaul, but comment what you'd want to see. Anyway, that's all for this video. If you have enjoyed it or found it useful, then a like or even a sub would be absolutely amazing. But that's it, so thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.